This video came up in my recommendation feed on YouTube. I've followed Tom Bilyeu for a couple years now. He has some really interesting takes on his podcast, and he gets into some really interesting conversations with folks. He's been talking a lot about disruption, economic, civil war, AI, all that kind of stuff. And I think he has a really good pulse on what's going on in the country. And again, he just talks to really interesting people. So I think it's worth diving in and hearing what he has to say.
Over the next 2 years, the life you know will vanish. No warning, no vote, just an inferno of artificial intelligence that will burn away everything you're used to. Jobs, relationships, family, religion, economics, warfare, they will all become unrecognizable by the time a kid born today graduates high school, if such a thing even exists by then. Your job is to figure out what this change means for you and how to navigate it well so you do not get left behind. That's what we're going to be doing here today. Let me set the table. This moment in history is unparalleled. The world's two major superpowers are locked in a Cold War, both battling for economic, technological, and military supremacy.
So, okay, right off the bat, one of the things I don't think people realize is like there's a broader game that's being played. So from a geopolitical perspective, we're in the midst, kind of like what he was saying, like a Cold War between the US and China. China has set itself up to become a dominant power. It doesn't want to like compete with the United States. You know, like the actual Cold War between the US and Soviet Union, that was competition, but I don't want to say friendly, because it wasn't friendly per se, but it was like a peer-to-peer competition. China has a different objective. It wants to restore itself to what it used to be. Like, China has thousands of years of history. Like, the United States has only been around for a couple hundred years at this point. China has a really long history, and it suffered a humiliating defeat at the beginning of the 20th century with the British and the Opium Wars, and it calls out the century of humiliation, but they're trying to essentially make up for lost time and replace the current Western US-led world order with a Chinese-led world order. AI plays a role in this, but they're working off of a timeline where they want to be AI dominant in 2030, and they want to replace the United States by 2049, which is the centennial of the founding of the People's Republic of China. So this is well documented. They talk about this in their state speeches. People who are way smarter than me talk about this and have written about this, China experts, all those kinds of people. So I wouldn't downplay this. I think there's a huge driving force here with China and the US. It's not just like AI is taking over the world and it's taking everyone's jobs and it's going to change everything. Like, there's a geopolitical game that's being played, and that is helping AI along at a much faster pace than I think people realize.
AI sits at the heart of all three. Charlie Munger famously said, "Show me the incentives and I'll show you the outcome." When great powers are fighting for dominance, the only incentive is to compete and win. What does that mean for our future? America, the world's policeman, is in the middle of a debt crisis. Populism is on the rise. Political tensions are at a fever pitch. Credible voices see civil war on the horizon. And right in the middle of all of that is the AI revolution. So what happens when an already pivotal moment in history occurs right in the middle of the most significant period of technological change the world has ever seen? That's what we're here to answer. The next 2 years are going to be dramatic because history doesn't move forward smoothly. It lurches forward in sudden, violent spasms of change when people revolt or science unlocks new abilities.
So he talks about how change happens really quickly, and it does. I think, in kind of what he alludes to here, it's happening at a much faster pace. So in the past, maybe it would have taken like a century or maybe a couple decades for the change to actually play out. Like, we're seeing this in a matter of months. It's been like 30 months, I think, since ChatGPT was released, and we're already at this current juncture. Like, it's just, things are moving much quicker than people realize.
Think of the printing press, electricity, the atomic age, the birth of the internet, and now AI. Now, my goal today isn't to convince you we should speed up or slow down. My goal is to help you understand the direction of travel and how to prosper through radical disruption. There's always a path, however narrow. Now, many people are going to emotionally implode over the next few years. Others, though, are going to win. In our time together today, I'm going to orient you towards what's happening and see if we can find that path, narrow though it may be, to winning in 5 easy parts. This time, I absolutely saved the best for last, so make sure you watch to the end where we talk strategy for how to win in this insane time. Part 1. The future is going to be faster and vaster than you think. In just the last year, more people talk to AI than their doctor, lawyer, or therapist. Character.ai, Replica, ChatGPT, and Snapchat's AI alone engage with millions of users daily, far more often and for longer than the average person consults with a professional of any kind for any reason. Project that forward, and you quickly see how AI becomes the dominant form of social interaction, full stop. But social interaction is just the beginning. AI is already changing jobs, medicine, engineering, warfare, and science. We are the proverbial frogs being boiled already. Sam Altman, the founder of OpenAI, has predicted that AI is progressing at a rate of 300% year over year with no signs of stopping. Do you know how insane that is? 3% growth year over year would already be exponential. At 300% growth, by the end of year 2, you're not at 600% growth, you're at 1,600%. That's how compounding works. That's 16 times your starting condition. In 3 years, you're at 64 times your starting condition. Now listen, even if Sam is delusional and it slows down for the terrifying reason I will explain in part 3, it's never going to stop. AI is that moment on our timeline where an entirely new skill tree opens up and nothing is the same after. I want you to close your eyes and imagine this. An 82-year-old man jogs a 10K at sunrise. His knees feel perfect. He's biologically 38 thanks to AI reprogrammed stem cells. His romantic partner, an embodied AI entity who's reignited his love life after his divorce, helped him overcome trauma, make financial decisions, and build a second career on YouTube. Our man doesn't even notice the hum of autonomous drones overhead quietly scanning for threats. He's thinking about his biologically customized grandson. He came out of the artificial womb exactly as expected. Adorable, cancer-resistant, and on track to be 6'4" and with an IQ pushed to the legal limit. On his 3rd birthday, they even upgraded him with a neural chip that lets him read and transmit thoughts telepathically to other augmented humans.
Okay, so I've talked about this in essays I've written. This is absolutely going to happen. There was a really good episode of Black Mirror that talked about this. Well, it didn't talk about it, but it shed light on this. This idea where the subscription economy is going to be applied to healthcare, and we're going to see biologically different human beings, so that like your ability to compete in the future is going to be predicated on your ability to continue up-leveling yourself. And this is one of the ways that the elites, socioeconomic elites, are going to distinguish themselves from everyone else, because they're going to run out of ways to do so. So if you think of how our society is structured right now, people differentiate themselves by what they own, right? Like your house, how many cars you have, the type of clothes you wear. That's about to become completely irrelevant. Like no one cares to some extent. We're all living kind of online lives at this point. So the only way to really start differentiating yourself and distinguishing yourself from other people is to start changing your biology. And so we're going to see this, and the technology already exists. That's why this is kind of scary, because you can start editing genes. You can start, designing your babies, choosing what you want. People are already doing things to biohack and make themselves biologically younger. And then chip implants, again, while it's Black Mirror, I think if you've watched enough Black Mirror, you've probably come to the same conclusion I have, that it's a lot closer to reality than it is fiction. So once things like Neuralink come online, I think it's only a matter of time before we see a new species of human form. So it's not even at this point like you're augmenting yourself. Like we're probably a generation away from an entirely new species being created, and that's going to be humans that are physically and cognitively enhanced to the point where they are far more superior than you and I.
His parents are contemplating the software update that would let him translate the family dog's barking. As future grandpa steps into his house, he feels his Neuralink chip reconnect to the quantum encrypted network his AI wife set up. The data from his run is uploaded and analyzed. I could go on, but hopefully you get the point. The future is going to be very different, and odds are it's going to arrive very fast, all made possible by artificial intelligence. AI entrepreneur and futurist Kai-Fu Lee went so far as to say AI will change the world more than anything in the history of mankind. How could it not? AI has already done a list of things so radical. One of them should leave you with your jaw on the floor. Forget chatbots. Here is but a tiny fraction of the things AI has already done. Solve the protein folding grand challenge, a feat humans have failed to do for more than 50 years. Create new gene editing tools, prove new mathematical theorems, improve medical diagnostics and drug discovery, detected tumors up to 4 years before they fully develop, gotten over 950 AI-powered medical devices and algorithms authorized by the FDA, improved foundational coding languages like C++, made Hollywood-quality filmmaking and music available to the average person, deployed millions of industrial robots in factories worldwide, and so much more, and that's what's happened right now. As AI clusters get bigger and more efficient, as we ramp up energy production, as AI makes new things possible, how far is it going to go? The biggest challenge in human history isn't something that will happen in the future, it's what's already happening right now. And as I was writing this, LA was literally on fire. It was in the middle of the riots. They didn't have anything to do with AI, but they had everything to do with people feeling left behind. People do not riot when they feel calm and confident about the future. They riot because they're mad, confused, scared, or all of the above. And typically that happens.
Another thing too, to add on to this, it's not even just that. People riot also when their jobs are threatened. So one thing you'll notice with a lot of the protests that are happening across the United States right now is the people who are at the protests are largely military-aged men. If you look back to the Arab Spring, for example, this was the predominant group of people that rioted and protested against Arab governments that led to the toppling of them. So you think Egypt, and Syria, Tunisia. And so this is something to pay attention to. And this is why the issue of young men feeling despondent, not being in relationships, not having jobs, being out of work, staying at home, playing video games. This is why this is actually a really big deal. And it goes far beyond, kind of superficial stuff, what people are talking about. It's not just that they're anti-feminist or they're incels or whatever. It's that they truly believe they have been cut out of society. They have been left out. They have no options. They have no opportunities for the future. They don't see optimistic in the future. And so this group of people is highly agitated. They're likely to take up arms against folks. And so this is one of the reasons why I do think we're heading towards some sort of civil war, because you have a large group. The group of people that would most likely fight in such a conflict is the group of people that has been most disenfranchised by the current status quo. And so they have the most to gain by disrupting the status quo. Like, feminists aren't going to revolt. They've gotten all the gains, right? Like, they're even white women are the top beneficiaries of DEI programs. So, I would pay attention to what young men are doing and how they're being affected. And as the AI revolution unfolds, like, where this leaves them, because I think this is the group of people that's going to be the most reactionary to what's happening.
Happens because of economics. And if I'm right about that, what happens when AI kills old jobs and creates new jobs they're not even qualified for? But we'll be fine, right? I mean, history shows. Well, what does history show? Does it say we'll be fine? It depends, I guess, on how you feel about 30 years of war. And that looming question brings us to part 2. History shows change makes people deadly. In the 16th century, a new media technology triggered the deadliest war in European history, a record that held until the 20th century. It killed 8 million people, 1 in 5 Germans, and left entire regions of Central Europe depopulated. The tech? It wasn't machine guns or cluster bombs. It was the printing press. Before the printing press, knowledge was only for the elites.
Okay, so I write about this at Tomorrow Today all the time. Like, this is my whole raison d'etre for what I'm doing, is I think we're living in our Gutenberg press moment. And that is why this is massively disruptive. So something you have to think about with the Gutenberg press and why it was so disruptive. It's not that it made books easier to print. It transmitted knowledge. And when it transmitted knowledge, it allowed dissent amongst the population to proliferate. So you have to think, what was life like before the Gutenberg press? Well, the church had a monopoly control on political power. In feudal Europe, they controlled most of the property. So they were the ones who controlled the means of production in a lot of ways. And the people who disseminated knowledge were monks, priests, people who could write. And even then, like, most people weren't literate, right? You didn't have the skills to be able to read because you didn't have access to books. So you kind of just like were told things and believed them to be true. That's how the Catholic Church was able to abuse its power, and that's what led to the Protestant Reformation, because the Catholic Church was essentially holding people hostage to paying, I forget what it was called, but you had to pay a fee to like absolve yourself of your sins. And so that's kind of what we're seeing with, I think, AI, is it's going to be massively disruptive in the same way, and that it's going to make our current status quo, world order, society, government, economic systems, all of that is going to become obsolete. And it's unclear what the future holds. I think we can like speculate and guess, but I think this period of time, the Gutenberg press and the transmission of knowledge and the conflicts that erupted as a result of that transformation and the deterioration of the church's power in Europe is a really good example of where we could be going.
A single book could cost as much as a house, but after it, books were cheaper than a teacher's monthly salary. This caused literacy to surge, but it also triggered mass chaos via the Protestant Reformation. Martin Luther wrote his 95 Theses in 1517, and that led to the explosion of Protestant ideas, which then fractured the religious unity of Europe. Over the next century, Europe splintered into Catholic and various Protestant factions, sparking waves of devastating conflict, ultimately culminating in the bloodbath that was the 30 Years' War. All of that was a consequence of making publishing cheaper. Can you imagine? The printing press simply made it cheaper to publish. But the second order consequence was that ideas could suddenly spread faster than tyrants could suppress them. That's a good thing. But it's not an only up phenomenon. It also divided people along ideological lines. The same tool that empowered liberty also allowed for the spread of propaganda and served to push people into camps people were willing to fight and die for.
Okay, the same thing is obviously happening today, and I think you can see the parallels, what he's drawing here between Protestantism, Catholicism, and the printing press. And then we have social media today, and we have ideological echo chambers that have formed. And the same tool, social media, Google search, the things that were supposed to connect us and give us access to more information have been turned into tools to separate and divide us. And now it's become increasingly difficult to live in objective reality. I mean, he was talking about the protests or the riots in LA at the beginning of this video. And, you know, my personal take is I think the people who are protesting genuinely believe what they believe to be true because they're only being shown some of the facts, some of the information. And, you know, I think there's they're incentivized not to question the news. And we saw this with COVID, right? Like there's just this push on the left not to question things, just to accept them at face value. And so if all you watch is MSNBC and all you see are people being taken away, and you're only seeing stills and images and videos of innocent people or innocent looking people being taken away, you see raids happening at like schools and churches and stuff, like that's what you believe to be true. You're not seeing the other perspective that could also be true. So I think we're already being pushed into these ideological echo chambers, which is why I think the comparison to the Protestant Reformation, the division between Catholics and Protestants, is really interesting to make here.
Sound familiar? Sure. Europe eventually settled down, but that is cold comfort to all of the people who died, and it certainly wasn't that long ago that Catholics and Protestants were still killing each other in Ireland. And history is full of insane stories just like that. Take gunpowder. Overnight, combat stopped being about muscle and started to be about money. A random guy with a musket could drop an armored knight at distance. It was a watershed moment in the history of warfare, but it also greatly accelerated the rise of centralized nation states. Prior to gunpowder, medieval Europe had been run by decentralized powers, local nobles and fortified castles. They could defy kings. Gunpowder, though, changed that equation real quick. large professional armies equipped with firearms emerged, which required bureaucratic organization and heavy taxation to maintain, thus strengthening state institutions. Scholars speak of the 16th century military revolution as giving birth to the early modern fiscal military state. This disrupted economic priorities and created huge opportunities for those paying attention to the changing landscape, but only for those paying attention. And if you think gunpowder was big, look at the Industrial Revolution, considered by many to be the most profound transformation of human life since the agricultural revolution. GDP per capita had been mostly flat for centuries. Then bam! With industrialization, we entered an era of truly exponential growth. Likewise, electricity sparked the second industrial revolution, utterly transforming the global economy. The cost of goods dropped and mass production soared to new heights. From automobiles to canned foods, electric-powered factories churned out products for a growing consumer society. Electrification also created entirely new industries, and by 1920, electricity and related industries made up a huge share of GDP in advanced countries. Jobs changed as well, pushing people from old jobs like lamplighters, candle makers, and horse cart teamsters to newer jobs like electrical engineers, electricians, and skilled workers to build and maintain the grid. Now, I might as well be describing AI itself, but AI will be far more revolutionary than anything we've seen previously. It's not an explosion of words or even the violent explosion of gunpowder. It is the explosion of intelligence, the very thing that gives birth to the revolutions that lurch us all forward. So the real question becomes, is this something we should be excited about? Are these technological advances really worth the risk of that kind of disruption? In my opinion, yes, but honestly, it doesn't matter. There's no stopping this train. So if your impulse at this point is to pump the brakes, I'm guessing you've never heard of Thucydides' trap. It's shocking and entirely predictable given what I know about humans. And if you've heard of Thucydides' trap, then you know exactly where we're headed. Welcome to part 3. Superpower Showdown, aka AI, is really an arms race. 12 times in history. 12 times in history. When a rising power threatened a ruling one, the result was war. Only 4 times was war averted. This is known as Thucydides' trap. The ancient Greek historian Thucydides first recognized this pattern when reflecting on the fall of Sparta and the rise of Athens. Sparta could not accept their decline, and Athens refused to tolerate being in second place. This pattern of rise and fall works like a tractor beam pulling superpowers into conflict. And right now, the rising power is China and the declining power, the United States. While the future is never perfectly knowable, historical patterns certainly make some things more obvious. AI is going to be at the heart of whether this becomes the 13th war or the 5th time in history it was avoided. That's why I don't think of this moment as a tech race. I think of it as an AI Cold War. It's not about gadgets or apps. It's about national survival. And when seen through that lens, you're going to be able to predict a lot more of what's about to come. Because when countries are overburdened by debt and a sense of global threat to their hegemony, as the US feels right now, populism kicks in and it becomes existential to maintain your advantage.
So it's not just populism and internal politics that's at play. It's also capital flows. And so this is why the Trump administration signed like a $500 billion partnership with OpenAI and Oracle and SoftBank to begin building infrastructure. And this is why so much capital is being pumped into AI startups right now. It's because of this. Whoever controls AI is going to control the future. And this is not too different from oil in the 20th century. Like whoever controlled oil controlled how the 20th century unfolded, for better or for worse. And so AI is going to be much the same way. What makes this fundamentally different is that AI is not something you can compete with because it's something that is going to be smarter than us. So up until this point in history, humans have always been in the driver's seat. We've been in control, and wars have been fought, kind of like he was saying, and there's been cold wars and races and stuff for hegemony. This is the first time in history where the outcome isn't just becoming a superpower, it's whoever wins the AI arms race will own artificial general intelligence, super intelligence. Like, they will be the ones that hold that. And that means there's a risk, or that means that the race we're in right now isn't concerned with the risks. It's who can get to AI and AGI the fastest, and we'll deal with the consequences later. And that's one of the reasons why this is going to be massively disruptive, because the folks at OpenAI right now don't care about you losing your job. They have zero care about that. And while there's a huge economic windfall for them if they win, that's also like secondary for a lot of things. Like, the big thing is who's going to get there first in terms of personal power and prestige, being part, having a legacy in the history books, but also winning the Cold War with China.
The US is $36 trillion in debt and climbing fast. There are literal riots in the streets right now, and we're going up against a disciplined and hungry China. As Alex Karp, the controversial CEO of Palantir, has noted, either we win or China will win. And that's going to matter not just to the US, but the world at large. There's another psychological principle that you've got to understand if you want to identify how the US-China conflict is going to impact the development of AI. You have to look at it through the lens of game theory and something called the prisoner's dilemma. That snaps this moment into focus real fast. If you don't know it, the prisoner's dilemma is a scenario where two individuals face a choice: cooperate or betray each other. If both cooperate, they get a moderate benefit. If one betrays while the other cooperates, the betrayer gains more and the cooperator loses badly. But if they both betray, they both lose, just not as much. The paradox is that even though mutual cooperation is best, rational self-interest often leads both sides to defect. Here's how it looks when you apply it to the US versus China as it relates to AI. Cooperation would be a global agreement is struck to slow or pause AI development. Defection would mean secretly or openly continuing aggressive development for strategic gain despite the global agreement. If China defects while the US cooperates, China gains technological, economic, and military supremacy. If the US defects while China cooperates, the reverse occurs. But if both defect, which is the default outcome without binding trust, they both sprint into a high-stakes arms race, regardless of all the massive risks that entails. Given that reality.
Okay, so one of the reasons why it's important to pay attention to this is because we have precedent for this with regard to trade. So prior to like the 1970s, like China was full on communist, not really part of global trade. In the 70s and 80s, they started to normalize relations with the West. By the 90s, there was a bilateral trade agreement in place that was renegotiated with Congress every year. And then by the end of the 90s, global trade was normalized with China. It became a member of the World Trade Organization. Okay, so we have that history recently. Well, what was the outcome of that? Well, China has cheated. We know that they've dumped products abroad. They've devalued their currency, and they can do that because of how their economy is structured. Every single business in China is partially owned or operated by the Chinese Communist Party. So there is no actual free enterprise there. The state has a hand in things. And so they can control how businesses are run. They can control their currency, what is produced. And so we've seen this. We've seen China become the world's manufacturer, right? So China has effectively signed all these trade agreements, not adhered to them, and then put itself in a position where everyone else relies on it. So we've already seen what China is willing to do and capable of doing. So it's not illogical to believe that the same thing would be true with an AI agreement. Like, there's no reason to believe why they would adhere to it. Like, they didn't adhere to global trade agreements, so why would they even adhere to an AI agreement?
Here's why the US must assume China will defect in real life. One, there are no enforceable mechanisms to verify global compliance on AI development. Two, China has publicly declared its goal to lead the world in AI by 2030. The race is literally on. 3, in previous tech races, nuclear, space, quantum, cooperation has been rare. Containment and escalation have proven to be the norm. 4, the cost of being wrong, of pausing while your rival accelerates, is truly existential in a world where AI will determine strategic advantage. Therefore, rational actors applying game theory would act exactly as the US and China are acting right now. Assume defection, build fast, and prioritize strategic advantage, even if that accelerates other risks. That's why in 2017, China launched its national AI strategy with a single bold objective: global leadership in AI by 2030. That's 4.5 years from now. Some reports claim that they're backing it with brute force, developing hundreds of AI mega data centers that are already built or under construction. Many are apparently co-located with vast solar, wind, and hydroelectric projects. In provinces like Gansu and Qinghai, data centers are being hardwired directly into renewable grids to ensure that their AI programs have all the energy they need. The US, by contrast, is winning on compute. Our semiconductor design still leads the world. We control critical choke points, NVIDIA chips, Dutch lithography machines, Taiwanese fabs. Trump's administration even launched a $100 billion initiative to build domestic AI supercomputing centers. Biden also kept the pressure up. Export controls slammed China's access to advanced chips, the goal being to maintain a compute lead and delay China's. But here's the problem: China is catching up fast. Their models like DeepSeek R1 are now within striking distance of OpenAI's most advanced versions. There's some controversy around how they did it, but nonetheless, they are gaining fast. David Sachs, now acting as the informal AI czar under Trump, warned in a Fox interview that America may have a 3 to 6 month lead at best. That lead could vanish overnight. And here's the real problem. We might dominate in chip design, but China has more energy. They've built 27 nuclear reactors in the past decade, with 23 more under construction. The US, just 2. And AI is an energy monster. The International Energy Agency projects data centers will use more power than the entire nation of Japan by 2030.
Whoa.
The entire nation of Japan. If AI is a weapon, and it most certainly is, and you don't have the power to run your models, you don't have the power to defend your country. That's not hyperbole. The armies of the future will be made largely of AI-powered robots and drones. We can see it already in the Russia-Ukraine conflict. Soldiers are being chased down by drones, and Operation Spiderweb, which allowed Ukraine to strike deep into the heart of Russia without the need for local soldiers, was only possible because of AI. Autonomous drones.
So this hasn't gotten, I mean, it's gotten some attention if you're in like the military community and like defense circles. I don't think enough of the general population really understands how significant the attack on Russia was from Ukraine. Like, it pretty much rewrote everything we think we know about warfare. Like, it's completely changed the game. And we saw, like, was it like a week or week and a half later, the Israelis did the same thing in Iran. They had pre-positioned trucks with drones in them that they used to launch attacks from within from within Iran. This is significant. Jeffrey Hinton, the godfather of AI, who helped essentially create the framework for building AI, he talked about autonomous weapon systems and how AI, lethal autonomous weapon systems, so how AI is going to be used in war to create new types of weapon systems. So some of it is going to be drones. It could be other things that we haven't even thought of yet. But this is pretty significant. So when we talk about the Cold War with China, it's not just economic. It's not just like computing and intellectual and energy. Like, there is going to be a hot conflict element to it, but it's not going to be the way we're used to wars being fought. You know, historically it was humans against humans, different types of weapons, different strategies. You know, horseback, trench warfare. Chemical weapons, nuclear bomb, all that kind of stuff. I think that's going to go out the window. I think we're going to start seeing more of what we saw in Ukraine and in Israel, but also against general population. So attacks on electrical infrastructure, clearly, as he just said, like, electricity and the ability to keep your models running is going to be a matter of your ability to defend yourself. So if China succeeds in taking down our electrical grid, like, that's a huge win for them. And this could lead to cyber attacks against U.S. citizens. So it's going to attack us on the infrastructure level. And there might be an aspect too of like autonomous weapon systems being pre-positioned and deployed. I mean, it's out of the news now, but that whole drone saga off of the New Jersey coast, if that was China and they do have the capacity, like that's terrifying to think about. Like, because people are talking about those. I didn't see them, but folks were describing them as the size of SUVs off the coast of the United States. So if you have hundreds of drones on the inside that you can then deploy against the United States in a massive coordinated attack, like suddenly our oceans don't matter anymore, do they? And so that really hits things home. But then if you can launch a cyber attack against critical U.S. infrastructure, okay, so you take the grid out, the grid goes down, but then also you take out our ability to interact in our economy. So, if they do that, what happens if the banking system goes down? There was a cyber attack against UNFI, which is a major food distributor, like a week or so ago. I don't think it's been resolved. If you shop at Whole Foods, you've seen shortages at Whole Foods, but literally like within 24 hours of attacking the UNFI system, like Whole Foods had shortages. So what happens if at a nationwide scale, there's some sort of cyber attack, there's outages that affect your ability to access your banking, access money, and then there's the inability of stores to maintain food supply on shelves. Like, if COVID was any dress rehearsal, like, I think this shows the significance of the moment we're living in and how big the threat actually is. Like, yeah, we're all going to lose jobs, and that's a huge part of this. But this is also part of a bigger story about geopolitical competition. And I think foreign adversaries will be able to do damage to the United States homeland that we have never experienced before. We never experienced a Dresden-style bombing or, the bombing of Britain. Like, World War II for us, like, was something we have no memory of besides those who went over and fought and those who experienced Pearl Harbor. The homeland itself was never under attack. And so I think we're entering a period of time where we could experience really destabilizing events here in the United States. And I think we need to really start getting past our differences, as superficial as they are, and really recognize what's at stake here. Like, at the end of the day, like a drone or a cyber attack doesn't care what your gender identification is. It doesn't care about your pronouns. It doesn't care what color your skin is. Like, it's going to affect all of us equally and in the same devastating way. And I think we need to start really paying attention to this.
Drones are rapidly becoming the standard, and it's only going to get more so from here. That's why any talk of an AI pause is pure fantasy at this point. Echoing Karp's statement, one US AI policy advisor said any pause could let China surge ahead. Both Thucydides' trap and game theory make it clear the US is not going to let that happen, certainly not without a fight. When the stakes are global hegemony, no one takes their foot off the gas. AI is the new great game, the 21st century space race. But instead of rockets, it's language models and metallic dogs with machine guns. Regulation isn't coming. Restraint is not viable. This is the age of escalation because every player knows whoever hesitates loses. But who cares, right? That's nation state stuff. That doesn't affect your daily life. Unfortunately, that's just not true. I went through all of that so you would not waste your time praying that someone somehow slows this train down. This train is only speeding up. It is full steam ahead for AI. And if you think that's not going to affect you, welcome to part 4. AI is a tsunami that will consume everything and usher in a devastating utopia. Yes, utopia. In 2004, the Indian Ocean tsunami swallowed everything in its wake. I routinely think of that guy on the beach who simply stood there as the angry wall of water devoured him. AI is that tsunami. The question is, what does the world look like when the water never recedes? In 1968, a researcher built a paradise for mice. Unlimited food, clean nests, no predators. Sounds awesome, right? Nope. Within 2 years, society collapsed, violence skyrocketed, the mice isolated themselves, and mass infertility swept the colony. It wasn't scarcity that killed them. It was abundance. The study is known as Mouse Utopia, and it may offer a glimpse into what happens when we get everything we ever.
There's a really great video about this that Rudyard Lynch from What If Alt His put out, and he kind of dives deeper into Mouse Utopia. I think that's worth watching after you're done with this. I'll link it in the description below. A lot of people just assume AI is going to lead to this great, wonderful utopia, and that is possible. I'm not saying that's off the table. It could usher in a second renaissance, a golden age, the likes of which we haven't seen before, a return to human creativity and art and poetry and culinary, skills and all that kind of stuff. Like, I think that is possible, but I think we also need to recognize in the interim, like, to get there, it's going to be really dark and dystopian. And I think so many people have hedged against a utopian view of the world. And history shows us utopianism doesn't manifest in the way that we think it's going to. Like, humans are meant to do hard things. We're wired to do hard things. I think, who is it? I can't think of his name. There's I'm trying to look for the book. Why can't I think it's going to come to me? Discipline is freedom. He's why can't I think of his name? This is so bad. Extreme Ownership. The guy who wrote that. There it is. Extreme Ownership. The guy who did that. He talks about discipline is freedom, and I think there's some truth to that. Like abundance doesn't do the good we think it does. Like what happens if you have everything you want and everything you need? Like, what's the point of living, right? I think we're hardwired to create conflict and to create scarcity for ourselves because, like, we're biologically hardwired to overcome conflict. And so I think a lot of people are looking at AI and they're like, oh, it's gonna alleviate work. We're gonna have UBI. We're gonna be able to do all these great and wonderful things. And I would challenge you to, like, maybe take a month off work if you can, or take a sabbatical. Or, if you do lose your job in the near future, like, you'll experience this acutely. Maybe talk to someone who's been looking for a job. But what it's like to lose structure to your day, what it's like to not have, maybe to live in an abundant world and maybe not have access to the abundance, right? Like, the United States has more food than, anywhere else in the world, and people are, like, struggling with obesity, but, like, there's food insecurity, and, like, so there's mismatch, right, of distribution of that. But just, like, ask people, like, what it's like psychologically, and at some point, like, the honeymoon ends and you're not just sipping martinis on a beach and enjoying yourself. Like, I think there's boredom that comes from it, and eventually, like in Mouse Utopia, you're going to create problems for yourself to overcome. I think that's just what we naturally tend to do.
Ever wanted, as AI promises to do. Let's lay out how it might go. AI is going to take our jobs, all of them. Why? Because it's going to be so much better than us at everything. The hard truth is AI is getting smart, really smart, and AI does not have to outsmart us by much to completely dominate us. Let me give you an example for scale. A moron, a literal moron, is technically someone with an IQ of about 70. The average IQ in the US is 98. Einstein was estimated to be 160. That's only 2.3 times smarter than a moron, and yet he had insights that gave birth to nuclear power and nuclear bombs, not to mention lasers, GPS, and a whole lot more. Said another way, a little intelligence goes a long way. And AI isn't going to be a little smarter than Einstein, it's going to be a lot smarter. Not 5 times smarter, or 10 times, or even 10,000 times smarter. We're talking millions of times smarter. In case you think I'm exaggerating, futurist Ian Pearson told the World Government Summit that AI could become billions of times smarter than humans. How? Because AI isn't limited by the messy, chemical-laden realities of being a meat bag like we humans are. We have to wait roughly 20 years for the next generation to be born, grow to sexual maturity, and have more kids. AI, on the other hand, is a non-biological system that is only limited by the laws of physics. AI will be able to think at the speed of light and will only be limited by the ever-increasing rate at which it can learn to configure electrons in novel ways. Now, if you're finding this as eye-opening as I did when I first started researching it, you're going to want to dig deeper into what's actually coming next. That's exactly where short form can help. If you want to understand where AI is headed, there's one book that maps out the realistic future scenarios, and it's called AI 2041 by Kai-Fu Lee and Chen Qifan. Lee was the former president of Google China and knows exactly how this arms race is playing out. This isn't like other summary services that give you surface level one-pagers. Short form has expert writers creating in-depth guides with commentary, counterpoints from other sources, and exercises for retention.
I find it interesting
Short form
that
also
he's
covers the
talking
topics
about
across
AI,
multiple sources
and this
with
whole
their
video is about
master
AI,
guides,
but then he has an
so
ad
you're not
for,
just getting one perspective on
a
AI's
short
future.
form, which is like
Plus,
a summary
their
tool.
browser
Like AI
extension
could
summarizes
do all this for
any
you,
YouTube
but
video, article, or email.
neither here
instantly.
nor there.
Click the link below to try it out for free and get 20% off your annual subscription. And now, let's see what history tells us about the disruption caused by technological advancements. AI is going to change everything about our lives. As we approach the technological singularity, the point beyond which things change so rapidly we can no longer meaningfully predict even the near future, we won't recognize our world from one day to the next. Ray Kurzweil, the man who has been predicting the future with 87% accuracy for roughly 4 decades now, says the technological singularity will happen around 2045, 20 years from now. But remember, it's not binary. That's the finish line. We're already headed down the path. Skills that took decades to master will be downloadable prompts. Living in LA, I can hear the sound of Hollywood dying in real time. The patterns that make hit songs are already being mapped. AI can now compose full orchestras to replicate dead artists with eerie precision. I heard a rap song yesterday that when I was showing to people, they did not realize that it was fake. In computer code, AI writes, debugs, and refactors faster than junior developers. And it's
So there's I'll link it below. There's a study that was published, a scenario by a group of AI researchers out of Silicon Valley called AI 2027, and it pretty much estimates, it's talking about what he's talking about here, how the proliferation of AI agents, so highly specialized AI tools, have made it possible to do junior developer tasks. And so this predicts that 2027 is going to be a critical juncture point, depending on how we choose and what we regulate. We could either go very, very dystopian or like only slightly dystopian, but pretty much dystopian either way. But basically for the next like 18 to 24 months that we're in, we're at a critical juncture point. So the disruption has already started. We're already on this train. I would pay attention to how agents evolve, especially with how they're applied to junior developer roles within Silicon Valley and tech startups.
It's only getting better and faster. In my own company, we've been building a video game for the past 3 years, and what used to take us 3 months and 10 people can now be done in an afternoon, literally by one person at only slightly lower quality. Even a script like this one, it used to take me a month to research, outline, and write. Now, with AI at my side, I can do it in a week. And it won't be long before anyone, can one-shot a video like this in my voice or anyone's voice. Fan fiction is already off the charts, and most, if not all, music, writing, movies, TVs, painting, books, all of it is going to be created with AI. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. Lawyers, accountants, doctors, even surgeons, all of them will see their numbers diminished for sure and eventually probably eliminated. Ironically though, AI taking our jobs isn't the scary part. The scary part is that it's going to usher in a utopia. Now, I can't believe this is true, but The Matrix actually predicted the problem with a technological utopia back in 1999. Agent Smith explains to Neo that originally The Matrix was designed to be a utopia, but people couldn't handle it, and The Matrix was rejected. Going back to Mouse Utopia, animals, including humans, just weren't designed for the easy life. We're designed to struggle against the odds.
Exactly.
But technology is the way that we reduce that friction and make everything easier. Whether it's fire, the internal combustion engine, computers, or AI we're talking about, technology is the promise of a better, easier future. And on paper, that's exactly what's going to happen. As the rate of progress picks up, AI will drive the cost of energy to effectively zero. It will make it possible to capture all or virtually all of the energy coming from the sun, and there is enough energy coming from the sun to do and build anything we have ever wanted. And once energy is free, robotic labor will be free. Once robotic labor is free, we will truly be living in an age of abundance. Education will be AI-driven, personalized, and always on. Housing effectively will be free. Everyone will have robot assistants doing anything they don't want to do. And voila, we're the people from WALL-E, obese and riding around in chairs, barely able to stand up. Everything will be easy.
Wall-E is one of my favorite movies. I think everyone should watch it. If you haven't seen it in a while, like, add it to your weekend movie queue. I think it foretold the future in ways like I don't think anyone really could have seen. I remember, I think I watched it, I think it came out in 2008, 2009. I remember I was in high school and I saw it, and it just, it really speaks to the moment we're in. I think it's worth rewatching if you haven't watched it in a while.
Easier and cheaper, but will it be better? In a world without friction, without necessity, without effort, what is it that's going to give life meaning? In a world where automatic forces threaten to suck us into the abyss, how do we take control and avoid the traps laid out before us? Welcome to Part 5. Where do we go from here? 5 steps to mastering the AI revolution. 2 stories, both true. One will break your heart, the other will light the way forward. In 2023, the release of a largely unknown AI model called ChatGPT bankrupted a billion-dollar company in roughly 72 hours. The company was called Chegg. It was a titan of online education, but nonetheless, AI snuffed it out almost overnight. No mercy for the founder who lost everything or the employees who suddenly had no job. One of the countless examples of the old getting killed by the new. Next, in 2024, a 21-year-old college dropout used AI to build a startup that outsmarted Microsoft's hiring system, landing this dropout $25 million in funding, all without him needing to write a single line of code. A tale of 2 companies, both controlled by AI. One destroyed by it because they didn't know how to use it, and the other never could have existed without it. We'll all go down one of those 2 paths. The only question is, which one? Assuming you want to win, here are the 5 steps to mastering the AI revolution. 1, master the AI tools. Learn all of them. ChatGPT, Manus, VO3, Midjourney, Claude, Sonnet, and whatever else comes next. Prompt like a master. Chain tools together.
So he comes at this from an entrepreneur's perspective and kind of hustle culture. So on the one hand, I agree with him. Like, we have to learn the tools. If you want to stay relevant, if you want to stay employed, you need to learn the tools. That being said, I don't know that it's possible to learn all of them. Like, things are moving so quickly that whatever you learn today could become irrelevant tomorrow. And so I think you have to learn some of the fundamentals, right? You have to learn the language that's being spoken, a lot of the terms and the vocabulary around AI tools is just different than what we're used to. So becoming aware of that, becoming AI literate, understanding how to prompt, understanding how tools work, how to use them within a company. I don't know that you can learn to master all of them. And there's just so many that have come online, and they're going to be redundant. Like, okay, so VO3 was just released. Everyone's talking about how it's going to upend content creation. Well, what happens in 6 months when a VO3 agent, so something that can think for itself in some regards, comes online? You know, instead of you having to prompt and learn how to prompt a tool, you're now learning how to prompt and work with an agent, which is basically the same thing, in my opinion, as working with like an assistant or an intern. So it's a very different, it's similar and related skill set, but also kind of different. So I think you kind of have to pick and choose what you want to learn if you're going to learn something.
Build automations for any repetitive tasks. Start fine-tuning your own models if you're brave enough. Build custom GPTs and find ways to craft systems that no one else has. If you don't know what those words mean, look them up now, or you really will get left behind. Train your own social algorithm to keep you aware of everything that's going on at the bleeding edge of AI. It moves fast, and you want to make sure that you see what's going on. Experiment and get your hands dirty. There is no substitute for actually using these AI tools and seeing exactly what they're capable of, including where they fall apart. You will often have to wade through a river of endless hype to get to the actual tools that are truly revolutionary. But you will be shocked by how far AI can extend your capabilities. 2, build something real. Write books, build tools, teach skills, make games, license content. It has truly never been easier, and this window is going to close fast. Soon, the world is going to be flooded with builders. But for now, you're in a magic window where shockingly few people have actually mastered the tools and are creating with them.
You also have to think about what's worth building. So in the past, and when I say in the past, like in a couple years ago, right? Like you could have been in the business of writing review books for exams, for example, and like selling ebooks and stuff on Amazon. Well, now that maybe SparkNotes, use SparkNotes as an example, right? Like SparkNotes had a whole business, was relevant, okay. Now you have AI who can effectively do the SparkNoting for you, and you can use AI to create custom tests and help like tutor you. So just because you can use AI to write a review book, for example, for someone studying, say, like AP World History, should you? Like, what's the lifespan of what you're building, and is it actually worth it? If it's not worth it and it can't, like, if whatever you're going to build doesn't last, I don't know if it's worth building it. So I think you have to really be discerning about what's worth building right now.
This moment reminds me a lot of YouTube back in like 2014. There was competition, but if you had something valuable to offer, you could make millions. I know because I did it with no previous experience. It's all about learning fast and moving even faster. 3, play to the fringes. The edges are where you're going to find the opportunities that are unguarded. That's where the leverage is. My company Quest launched at the height of the Great Recession and sold for $1 billion. Same for Shopify, and today it's worth over $100 billion. Why do these companies still work even in the worst economic environment since the Great Depression? Because a crisis opens up opportunities. It's your job to take advantage of them. Ask yourself, what does AI make possible that wasn't possible before? What niche audience was impossible to serve before AI? What was previously too expensive but now can be done very cheaply? Find a forgotten or underserved niche. Figure out where the freaks and geeks are that have a rabid appetite for your idea. Apple, of all companies, started in a super nerdy, obscure computer club. My own YouTube content, which has now been viewed over 1 billion times, started inside of a protein bar company. Great things often start in small, die-hard communities. Find them and serve them with the leverage that AI gives you. Jeff Bezos started Amazon when only 14% of Americans had internet access. Do not wait until AI has saturated the market, which is happening fast. If you want to win big, get started immediately. Work on nights and weekends if you have to. There's no need to quit your day job. Just start building in your spare time. AI speeds.
I would ask yourself, and this is kind of my general theme here, like ask yourself what's worth building and why. Like, why do you want to win big? I think this hustle culture, and it's easy for him, right? Because he's been super successful. I think hustle culture has been incredibly pervasive and destructive to society. Like, just because you can build something doesn't mean you should. Doesn't mean that it's beneficial to society, doesn't mean it's going to be beneficial to your mental health, and it's not necessarily going to give you purpose. A lot of the people who are building right now, it's kind of superficial companies. There are a lot of wrapper companies, they're SaaS products with AI features. I don't think people who are building right now are actually building things that are going to have as much of an impact as, you know, what Elon Musk or Sam Altman are doing. So I would be discerning, you know, is it worth it? Like, what's actually important to you, and is it worth it? If you come to the conclusion, I think I've quickly come to, like, a lot of stuff just really isn't worth building right now, and maybe smaller mom and pop companies are better. Like, maybe you're better off being a woodworker and not diving into AI. Obviously, you know, that's a choice for you to make for yourself, based on the life you want to continue living into the future, and what your interests are. Hustling nights and weekends to build AI only for whatever you build to become obsolete or not really add value to society, I don't know that it's worth it in the long run.
Everything up. Use that to your advantage. All right, that's all I'm going to say about building. The first 3 steps to mastering AI are about the narrow window of time that we're in right now before AI beats us at everything. Once that happens, and it will, I certainly hope I've been able to convince you of that by now, you're going to need these next 2 steps. 4, find meaning by doing hard things that matter. The only thing worth pursuing in the long run is fulfillment. Fulfillment is the one neurochemical state that will survive even grief. Fulfillment is about making sure you have meaning and purpose in your life. And fulfillment comes from a very simple formula. You have to work really hard to gain a set of skills that matter to you for your own reasons, that allow you to make progress towards an honorable goal. Notice I didn't say achieve it, to make progress. If you achieve it, great, but don't tie your identity up in that. It's about becoming the kind of person that you would respect. It never ceases to amaze me how simple humans really are until the day that AI makes it possible to synthesize and edit our DNA en masse. What ultimately dictates the quality of a human life is how you feel about yourself when you're by yourself. Don't lose sight of that. 5, fall in love and raise a family. This may feel like it's out of left field for a video about navigating a world that is changing so rapidly, most people will be paralyzed by overwhelm. But here's the truth. We need meaning and purpose. We need to love and be loved. We need to do hard things. And while I cannot speak from experience, I can see from an evolutionary perspective that having kids is what nature wants us to do. There are built-in algorithms running in your brain that will reward you for having and raising kids.
Okay, I think this is why we're seeing such a resurgence right now in traditional values and push against feminism and kind of like the trad wife movement and things like that. I think this is absolutely true. Like the only thing that has stood the test of time throughout all of history's technological disruptions, all the war, famine, is family. Like the family unit is the one thing you can go back millennia and it existed and it still exists today. So I think this is the one buffer against AI. Like, you're not going to be smarter than it. You're not going to be, unless you have all the money in the world, you're not going to be biologically superior. So what will you have? You'll have family. You'll have the ability to enter into relations with other people and to create life. And I think this is something that we have to lean into as a society and as a species. Otherwise, we're going to go extinct. There's no other way to square that circle. And I do think family and giving back and loving unconditionally is the thing that makes us fundamentally human. It's what we're hardwired to do. It's what we're programmed to do. Like, I love cooking. I love cooking so much. And I don't do it because the patriarchy told me to go into the kitchen. Like, I do it because I genuinely love serving the people I love through food and through creation and nourishment. So yeah, like I do bake bread from scratch and make sandwiches from scratch and pasta from scratch, and I love it. It's my favorite thing in the world. And I think we have to lean more into those human things, the things that make us unique, the things that AI can't do. Like at some point, sure, maybe there'll be like an AI powered like Vitamix, whatever, but an AI will never be able to like hand knead bread. Like it's just not going to be able to do that. So I think he's right here. I think the crux of all this is family, and I think this is why we're seeing a push towards more conservative and traditional values that put family first.
And I can't think of any better default way to have deep meaning and purpose than to raise children well. There are no universals in life, but I think you deviate from that path at your own risk. I don't have kids, so I know you can do that well, but it requires some extra planning if you want to make sure your life has meaning. No matter what happens with AI, love and family will be constants, at least until humans become fully synthetic, but that's a whole nother video. Ultimately, your life should be full of joy. And while I expect that AI is going to knock a lot of people down, and I think a great many people are going to have a very tough time adapting, the reality is that how we respond to this radical change is going to be up to us. Some people will get fully augmented and travel to Mars. Others will move to a farm off the grid and reject technology completely. That much we all get to choose. Let me leave you with this. AI is rewriting our world faster, vaster, and more brutally than any revolution in human history. There has never been anything like it. Not the printing press, or gunpowder, electricity, or even atomic energy. But history shows over and over that disruption carves paths to progress, but only for those who move. The US and China's AI arms race guarantees that this train will not stop. Many will be paralyzed by overwhelm, others will die in mouse utopia, but we all have a choice. And if I were to suggest one, it would be to push for sensible regulation, choose the hard path of meaning and purpose, and master the tools while that still matters. Whether it's 2 years or 20 years away, don't just stand there on the beach and let the tsunami take you. Have the courage to take on whatever comes next and push yourself to the limit. Remember, the future isn't some far off thing, it's happening right now, and it's moving a lot faster than you think. All right, guys, if you want to see me explore ideas like this live in real time, make sure that you're joining me for my lives on my channel.
Okay, so he echoes a lot of things that other folks have been saying too. So like all the things I say about AI and like my recommendations, it's coming from logic, it's coming from an understanding of history and things we've done in the past, but it's also coming from a synthesis of what other really smart people are saying. And if other really smart people are saying to become AI literate, I think it's probably wise to become AI literate. But it's also wise to introduce friction and difficulty into your life. And that's why I like cooking. That's why this is such a great example. Like, yeah, sure, I can go to the Whole Foods hot bar and never have to cook again. But that doesn't provide the same meaning and value to my life that cooking from scratch does, right? So you have to figure out what lights you up, what excites you to wake up in the morning, what do you love to do, and then figure out how to do more of that. And if that means introducing friction in your life, then introduce friction. Like, I love to learn, okay? I use AI tools, I use smart tools to help me learn. I also don't. I read. I have like tabs and stuff, right? Like, I read physical books. So sometimes you have to introduce friction and introduce hardship and do really hard things. So yeah, if you want to lose weight, maybe Ozempic's not the right path. And if you want to learn, maybe downloading everything that you can download and cheating your way through, you know, especially if you're in school, cheating your way through school using OpenAI and ChatGPT, like maybe that's not the right path. So I think there's a lot of good wisdom here. And I think, you know, as much as folks recommend sensible regulation, I think it's just everything's moving too quickly. I don't know that we're going to get the regulation we need in time. So as he was saying, like, it's up to us as individuals to choose the relationship we have with AI moving forward. So we have to establish what is fundamental to us, what gives purpose and meaning to our lives, you know, what type of work, what type of vocation do we want to do, are we going to have families, yes or no, and then what the relationship is going to be like with technology. The Amish are a great example. Like, I think there needs to be a deep dive of the Amish. Like, they've clearly figured something out to preserve their way of life for this long, and maybe their rejection of technology, not all aspects of technology, of course, but some parts of technology, is worth diving deeper and looking into, like, why did they reject certain things. And I think when you start applying this to ourselves, I don't know that getting up in like the hustle culture and staying like doom scrolling is the right path forward. But I do think there's a place for AI in our lives. We have to figure out what that means for each of us individually, and then chart our course of action accordingly. And I think kind of what he was saying, we're in this Goldilocks window. I think there's probably about 2 years, maybe a little bit less than that, 18 to 24 months, where there's still time to act, there's still time to do things, time to make choices. I think slowly, though, that window is closing and we're going to lose that opportunity. Definitely check out Tom's channel, though. He interviews a lot of really interesting people, and I think there's a lot that he has to offer. So I will see you in the next video.